Since we looked at the most overpaid player from every NBA team a couple videos back, we gotta look at the most underpaid from every team. And just like with the underpaid videos I've done in the past, we obviously can't include any players on rookie deals because they would be getting paid a lot more, but they physically aren't able to. And I also will mention that the Grizzlies, Magic, Pelicans, Thunder, Spurs, Hornets, Kings, and Suns aren't underpaying anyone because these teams either consist of mostly players on rookie deals or because they're flat out overpaying everyone on the team, kinda like the Hornets. And don't get me wrong, this video is the most underpaid players, but no NBA player is really underpaid. We're just speaking in terms of what they should be getting compared to other players in the league. And with that out of the way, we can get into the actual video, starting with the Bucks and Giannis. In 2017, Giannis signed his 4-year, $100 million contract extension, and today that puts the reigning MVP as the 42nd highest paid player in the NBA. He's underpaid for now, but won't be pretty soon because he's eligible for the largest contract in NBA history with a supermax of 5 years and $247 million pretty soon. But there's still a chance he takes a pay cut to help his team win. Someone who's not as worried about winning though is Patrick McCaw from the Toronto Raptors, who's making $4 million a year but is the true GOAT because he's played 3 seasons in the league and is a 3-time NBA champion. So as of right now, there's a 100% chance that whatever team he's on will win a championship. So somebody sign this man to a max deal. Alright, but for real though, on the 76ers, the spot goes to Josh Richardson, who's going to be getting paid $10 million for this season and the next 2. But with how he's developed in recent years, it looks like he can be worth a lot more than that pretty soon. He put up 17, 4, and 4 for Miami last year, while arguably being Miami's top shooter and defender. And while I feel like he can easily get lost in Philly's system this year, and his production could drop, his potential on a team that he fits in on is worth a lot more than $10 million. Another underpaid player that I feel has been underrated for a few years now is on the Celtics and Enes Kanter. And with him signing a 2-year, $10 million deal with Boston recently, it puts him as one of the more underpaid guys in the league. But Enes knows that's not as much money as he deserves because he said that going into his 10th season, his #1 goal isn't money anymore and it's about winning championships. I mean, if that was the case, he should have signed with the Clippers or at least the Lakers instead of a team with no current All-Stars. But we'll see how things work out. Victor Oladipo, on the other hand, signed a 4-year, $85 million deal before ever playing a game for the Indiana Pacers, which is why he's currently not making as much as he should be. He won't be back on the court from his injury until January of this year, but he'll still be recovered in time for the playoffs. And if he returns to playing like his old self, he's a max or at least near max player. Currently though, he's the 9th highest paid shooting guard in the league and the 50th highest paid overall player, which is far away from what he really deserves. The Brooklyn Nets then have 2 underpaid players on the roster. Maybe more if you're counting how Kyrie and KD took less than max deals to play for Brooklyn, but that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris. And Joe Harris took a few years to find his way in the league, but then the Nets gave him a chance, and he proved to be a solid role player, so he signed a 2-year, $16 million deal at the start of last year. But then little did anyone know he'd transform into one of the best shooters in the league, shooting 47% from 3 and winning the 3-point contest. So if he keeps playing like that, I could see him making at least $13 million a year on a new contract. Then Dinwiddie's surprising because he's not in the same situation, where he got a lot better after signing a new deal, because he just signed his 3-year, $34 million contract extension with the Nets last year in the middle of his best season while he was putting up 17 and 5 off the bench. And I feel like he could have got a lot more money, or even found a starting role for a team like the Magic. But he was the one that agreed to the deal, so he must be happy in Brooklyn. And speaking of backup point guards, the Pistons got a great deal for Derrick Rose, where they're only having to give him $7 million a year. And I've been confused on how he took such little money for a team that desperately needed a point guard after he put up 18 a game off the bench. But you gotta remember that just because he had one healthy season doesn't mean there isn't just as much of an injury risk with him. So in terms of that, it does make sense. Then the Wizards also have 2 underpaid players in Bradley Beal and Isaiah Thomas. Beal's looking more and more like he's a max deal kind of player, and he only ends up here because he's yet to sign the extension that the Wizards offered him, which leaves him making $27 million this year as the 7th highest paid shooting guard in the NBA. I don't think he should or will sign that extension, so Washington needs to trade him, but I don't know that they will. And as for IT, he's on a veteran minimum deal, while he has a chance to be Washington's starting point guard for the year. So even if he plays decent and averages double digits, he'll still be considered an underpaid underpaid player. The Atlanta Hawks pulled off the biggest steal of free agency in Jabari Parker, who was signed on a deal making him $6 million a year. I mean, he's definitely not the player everyone thought he would be. He's injury prone, and his draft day comparison was Carmelo Anthony, which we all know now isn't the best thing to brag about going forward, but the man still puts up 15 a game off the bench. Plus, he's got plenty of time to turn things around since he's only 24, but even if he doesn't, a 15 to 20 point scorer off the bench on most nights out of the year for only $6 million is definitely worth it. Then I would say that the Chicago Bulls might be slightly underpaying Zach LaVine. When they first matched the Kings offer sheet and gave him a 4-year $78 million deal, a ton of people, not including myself on this one, thought he was getting overpaid. But he immediately came out this past season and proved people wrong by putting up 23 a game on great shooting numbers, shooting 47% from the field and 38% from 3. And for a super athlete like himself, if the Bulls can improve and he can put some more focus on defense, he without a doubt has all-star potential. And based on how players are getting paid so much based on potential, I could see LaVine getting paid a lot more in today's market. There was almost no one for the Knicks, but I found a loophole. Since Alonzo Trier went undrafted, then was signed by the Knicks, he's technically not on a rookie deal. So at only $3.5 million a year, with the potential he's shown for the Knicks this past season, you gotta think he's a steal. He's come up and had some huge games when given the opportunity, so hopefully from here on out he continues to develop. The Golden State Warriors have Draymond Green, who they signed to a 5-year, $82 million contract in 2015. And he's become a much better player since then that deserves to be paid more. Unless he comes out like he did last season, out of shape and lacking effort. But since it's his contract year, I don't think he will. We should mention the Nuggets with Torrey Craig, who was undrafted in 2014, but after making a career for himself overseas, the Nuggets gave him a chance, and after playing 39 games, they signed him to a 2-year, $4 million contract. And since then, Craig's come out as the team's best overall defender, especially in the playoffs. And now he's like an Andre Roberson type of player, where he doesn't bring much of anything on offense, but has some of the best defense in the NBA. And I mean, even Roberson's getting paid $10 million a year. Then for the Blazers, you could say that Yusuf Nurkic is getting underpaid, making about $11 million a year, making him the 22nd highest paid center in the league, behind guys like Ian Mahinmi, Jonas Valanciunas, and Cody Zeller. And I mean, Nurkic is only 24. When Steven Adams was 24, he signed with the Thunder on a contract making him $25 million a year, based solely on his potential. And even right now, I'd rank Nurkic slightly ahead of Steven Adams. Keep in mind though, OKC did just pay Steve way too much. The Rockets, on the other hand, have PJ Tucker making about $8 million a year. And I don't know how much more he'd really get somewhere else since he's already 34, but his game and his defense haven't slowed down at all. And for what he brings to Houston on both ends, guarding the other team's best player and allowing Harden to do what he does, if they had more money, it should definitely go to Tucker. On the Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell's obviously their most underpaid, but he's on a rookie deal, and they're paying everyone else on the team a decent amount. So if I had to give this spot to someone, I'd say Jeff Green, who's still only 32 years old and put up a solid 12 points a game last year, but is only making the veterans minimum. Don't get me wrong, he doesn't deserve too much more, but if I needed to pick someone, it would be him. The Los Angeles Clippers then have the most and best underpaid players in the league, in Patrick Beverley making $12 million a year, Lou Williams making $8, and Montrezl Harrell making $6 million. Beverley and Lou both took less money to stay with the Clippers, and Harrell didn't break out until this past year. And thanks to these three guys getting paid so much less than they should, it's what's made them championship favorites in a lot of people's eyes. Then Avery Bradley and DeMarcus Cousins are both getting heavily underpaid by the Los Angeles Lakers. I think Avery probably took less money to play for LA, but I feel like he's also been undervalued a ton in recent years because he hasn't been on a contending team, and because of that hasn't been used right, and I'm thinking a lot of teams have forgotten what he's really capable of. So I say he's underpaid, and we'll see this season if I'm right. But DeMarcus Cousins also isn't paid enough, and it was pretty surprising that there were still no teams that wanted to sign him, so he only ended up getting a deal that gave him $3.5 million this year, especially after he showed he could still go with the Warriors, putting up 16 and 8 in limited minutes to close out the season. But with him getting injured again in the playoffs, teams are probably worried that he's become injury prone and still isn't worth the risk. Then one of the most underrated and underpaid players whose talent is getting wasted the most is on the Minnesota Timberwolves in Robert Covington. He's making around $11 million a year, and he's another one of those guys that isn't great on offense but is an elite defender, and he really makes his entire team better on that end. Plus, he's not as bad on offense as the similarly paid, recently mentioned Andre Roberson. I would think Covington would have gotten paid more, and I'm shocked that the Wolves still haven't traded him to a contending team. But they've kept him because they love what he does on the defensive end that much. And for the last team, it's gotta go to the Dallas Mavericks and Boban Marjanovic, aka that analytics god that's the most efficient player in NBA history and has the most points per shot attempt ever. No, but seriously, he signed a contract that pays about $3.5 million a year, and for his ability to only play limited minutes and his deficiencies on defense, it makes sense. But for his god status, he's underpaid. If you enjoyed the video, comment down below and let me know. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next video.